what I observe is when kids first get their opportunity to lead, they just default to what they know leadership to be, which is from the household, or they're trying to mirror their head coach. They're trying to mimic what they think leadership is versus being their authentic self and being who they are and what got them that role.
We're so very fortunate to have three phenomenal partners of the podcast. Play, Rock Daisy, and Output are all companies that I've worked with for many years and fully endorse. Make sure that you support them when you can, or let them know when you see them how much you appreciate them being part of this podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the CEO Strength Coach podcast. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery. Super excited about this episode. Got a buddy on, Tex Wilkin. He's the founder of Captains and Coaches, and known Tex for quite some time, just an all-around good dude. And I really appreciate him coming on the show. If you guys are just new to this podcast, something that's simple, free, that you can do, subscribe, like, let somebody know about it. Those things just help us with our partners, Rock Daisy, Output, the whole deal. But man, it's a free thing, but it allows us to get great people like Tex on the podcast. But man, been pumped up to have this episode. And ever since we scheduled it, appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah, man, I always enjoy the conversations, whether it's a phone call or a conference. Always look forward to those moments. So excited to now really dial in and share and just press record on what we're going to have a conversation about.
Well, I wanted to, as we talked a little bit off camera, I wanted this to be a manager episode. The one thing that I'd always say about, technician, manager, entrepreneurs is like, we went to school to be technicians. We went to school to be coaches, right? We were taught that. You can even debate that a little bit, but like where the rubber meets the road, when you do the job is when you have to manage time, people, and resources. People being the hardest part, right? And leading leaders might be the hardest thing that a coach does. That's a young leader that's new to that situation. So you've gone off and built a company around this and coaching leaders, captains, coaches. Talk a little bit about the origin of that and kind of what the goal is there.
I'd love to. So a couple of years ago, my dad had a heart surgery. He didn't have a heart attack, but he was cut you open, and he just went in for a normal checkup, and they sent him like right away. So my sisters and I had to caretake, and I was sitting there for 2 weeks, like dressing wounds and helping him go to the bathroom. Like real life was hitting, and I wasn't having fun at my job. And then I was sitting here with my dad, and we just got the opportunity to talk about life and when was the most like impactful growth, just monumental time in my life. And it was when I was team captain of my college lacrosse team. A very unique experience in that I had a dictator coach that recruited me freshman year, but then he left the team midway through my fall semester of my sophomore year and left the school high and dry. He took another job. And so they were in a scramble, and they hired a local high school lacrosse coach who was an alumnus of my university, Marymount. And he was 28 years old, as green as can be coaching. And I was his first team captain. So sidebar, my dad's perfectly fine. He's back to golf, and he's always been a fit man. So that helped him rebound. But that time with my dad, and then the time I had with my coach to build a foundation of Marymount lacrosse, and my head coach, John Reynolds, is still there today. So what we built 20 plus years ago, that was something special. And it was in his office, it was leading the team. And that was that moment. We had a special relationship. I've known hundreds and hundreds of coaches that were former college athletes throughout my career, and they didn't have the same relationship. They had more of the dictator type where they are resentful for their head coach, love their teammates, but resented that coach, or love their coach and just, it was one chapter. Sports was one chapter in their life, and they moved on from it. So highlighting the dynamic in that relationship, because the team captain, it's representative of a manager that you got to go to in life, because you're a 360-degree leader. To quote John C. Maxwell, that was one of the books I read way back when as a team captain, because there was no sports-specific leadership books out there. It was all just business or mindset. Mind Gym was another book I dove into. Yeah. So now it's aiming to combine all those lessons and speak directly to the athlete or that first year coach, because you're a 360-degree leader as well. You got to lead up to head honcho, you got to lead down to your athletes, and then team captain. Just a year before you took on that leadership role, you were on the same level as them. You were equals, and now you're just one step ahead. They're still your teammates, but now you have to lead your own team. Similar to the workforce, where you level up into a new role with more responsibilities, where you were just bitching and moaning and complaining about your boss to your friends, and now you're their boss. So
That's right.
how do you handle that? What are the first key steps? And big part of the podcast is diving into that first year leadership, when you're, whether a team captain or first year coach, when you were 22, 23. And then ironically, my first coaching opportunity, I did so well as captain that my coach offered me a graduate assistant role. So then I had to take another step up and take on, these were my friends. They were now my athletes, and that plenty of failure for that year as well. So all of those lessons to then distill down, synthesize, and connect with great coaches like yourselves, learn from them, and hand it off to these young leaders, young future entrepreneurs that are taking charge of their teams, and they just want something more. And that's another challenge as a young leader. You usually want it more than your teammates. And that's why you got the opportunity to lead. So how do you then connect down to them to get them to believe in themselves, the same thing that you want for yourself and you want for them?
Man, I identify with that so much. My senior year, we had a 28, I don't know if he was 26. I think he was 26. But I mean, our coach left late. We hired a young coach. I was in on the hiring committee. I was leading the workouts as a senior. I ended up going on this leadership committee. They wanted to go with somebody else, the hiring committee. I stood up and was like, this is our guy. Or I made the two other players that were in there with me walk out. And I'm like, that's our guy. That's who we're going to play for. And, I mean, I made it more dramatic than it probably was. They were probably thinking the same thing. But at the end of the day, we wore this guy, and he was one of the most impactful. I mean, there's a picture of him on one of these screens here. But that said, I mean, you're right. Like so many times, whether or not you're the next coach in waiting, you're the assistant gets elevated just because it's just easier to go with you, or you're that player and all of a sudden you're a junior and now you're a senior. You just get dumped on this leader moniker. And at no point did you have any sort of training to really like develop yourself in that way. So like, how does that shape, the way that you coach your athletes, your fellow employees, your staff, things like that, to develop that skill set that they're prepared when they do get those opportunities?
Yeah, what I observe been coaching for 16 years. I still coach lacrosse, so not college, but high school now, and then dive into the strength and conditioning stuff all over. What I observe is when kids first get their opportunity to lead, they just default to what they know leadership to be, which is from the household, or they're trying to mirror and get a big chest like their head coach may be, right? Or kids on lacrosse that also play football, they try to football coach their way as a senior. And that's just representative. They're trying to mirror and mimic what they think leadership is versus being their authentic self and being who they are and what got them that role. So it's asking, find what values they like. What do they like about that coach or father figure that they are trying to mirror and represent? And rather than step in and be aggressive with the ultra masculine traits, let's find out what traits you do value that then lean in. And teaching them to relate to their teammates. High school is awesome, right? We got funny movies, we got music, we got all these things that we can tap into, and they're still connected to their youth, whether it's Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I mean, you name one of the massive franchises, all these kids are still nerds at heart. So helping a senior remember that he is also a nerd like this freshman that's into Star Wars, and finding that bridge and that gap versus, hey, you have to listen to me because I said so, and just the over aggressive. So it starts with teaching them to relate, and then start to get into some public speaking opportunities within the group. That is always very nerve wracking, and it's the number one fear in America, but helping them understand like, hey, there's fun to this, and there's 16-year-old boys don't understand this term in public speaking. It's called tonality. It's where I'm elevating my tone and changing it to try to make my point. They always just come in with very monotone, direct tonality. Thank you very much. I appreciate that help. It's like, well, you don't sound like you appreciate it. So just creating some self-awareness, some social awareness is that first piece, and helping them relate to the younger versions of themselves on the team. And it's usually just leaning into movies. I'm a big movie buff, and having some fun with that. I make fun of their movies just because I can. At the same time, I've already seen them and I enjoy them. I just, have more of a movie collection to draw and make my movie quotes and personality about versus their limited range. So that's
Yeah,
why I
that's
like the
great.
bus rides up to Dallas. Say, I'll take care of all the DVDs for the crew. Trust me on these documentaries like Anchorman.
Documentaries like Angel, I have to use that one. Yeah, it's I agree with what you're saying 1,000%. It's something that I've done naturally in my career just because I modeled again. I think I modeled maybe that leader that I had as a senior, but like you don't just become a senior, you don't become a leader because your parents had sex before somebody else's parents did, right? Like that just because you're older doesn't mean all of a sudden that you're a leader, right? And I think that's what happens so many times. It's like, oh, you just can't lead when you're a freshman or a sophomore. Well, truth is sometimes those are your best leaders and they could go the other way with it if they're not empowered, and they don't feel like they have some sort of voice in things. So I would naturally, like you're saying, always, whether it's okay, our word of the week is commitment, right? Okay, Tex, what's commitment mean to you before a workout, right? And you put them on that spot to get them to talk in front of their teammates. Well, I've always said that we don't cross the sideline. Like there's not a single coach that crosses that sideline, and they have to be able to talk and communicate and interact with one another out on the field. And I agree with you in that finding that pop culture and finding that relatability, that's something there. But I know I struggled with that because I wasn't like, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't freaking go out. I wasn't in the silly movies. Like I was like winning. That was the only thing that I talked about, did, and was focused on. But one of the things that I've heard you say a couple times, and you even did it at the beginning of this podcast, was that, storytelling and identity and that relatability of even just people like, that authenticity comes through with you sharing like your dad, right? Like there's a connection there because you've kind of given a piece of yourself. How important is storytelling and creating kind of a leader's narrative? Is that, is important to helping those leaders kind of elevate themselves from their peers a little bit?
Man, I'm glad you asked that, and I'm getting emotional over here because it really started to mean something when I failed to do it. So we had a 16-year-old. He was a sophomore team captain in my high school, not my high school, the high school I was leading. And then circumstance, summer, he had a heart defect, an issue that nobody was aware of, and then he passed away. And so for the next 2 years, like our culture, our team was built around the passion of this young man because it was, I mean, contagious. It was beautiful. And we built our culture based off that. And then when his class was a senior, this freshman class came in and they didn't know the young man, Taden, who passed away. And so all of a sudden our rally cry is wolf pack. Like we are one. It's live like Taden. All of our war cries, it meant nothing to them. And they felt alienated. And the parents within that class, they didn't understand what was going on. And so we failed to then articulate the meaning and the passion of this young man. And it destroyed the team. That freshman class, the parents went rogue and then just disbanded and had their boys break away from the team because they didn't feel part of it. I've never seen anything like it. I got my own theories. This was the first class. I feel middle school is the first time that parent is not coach and parent hands off their athlete to a professional coach for the first time, whether it's volleyball, football, basketball, the standard middle school sports. And they got to sit back and watch this coach make decisions, make play calls, and do all that, and then learn how to be a parent on the sidelines and not a parent in the stands versus a parent on the sidelines. And this group, they missed that middle school sports. The freshman parents came in and they crossed every boundary that we felt was established, but we didn't communicate it because it was just too many years away from it. And if we led with the story of Tayden and led with like his passion for the team as a wolf pack, that was his words that we embodied, then we could have effectively saved the program, which is in shambles right now. Unfortunately, I'm no longer coaching there. So you are right. It is relating because that hit our community so hard. And again, we assumed that the kids 3 years removed would be a part of it, but they wanted to develop their own culture, and they did somewhere else. Unfortunately, it is still connected to that relating, and it is a sense of self-awareness and social awareness where we didn't have the social awareness to read it on their faces when they weren't building that buy-in, where they didn't have the self-awareness to realize that there is something that's bigger than themselves. And that's what I still hold to this day. And a lot of the lessons that I am teaching, it is anchored in self-awareness, social awareness, which then I believe leads to self-management, where we're not losing our temper on the field, where we're directing our passion, we're directing our anger to where it can be successfully profited from, which is the off season, which is aggressive play within the rules of each sport. And then leadership, like between the sidelines, between the whistles, between the quarters. That's our opportunity when we're together versus separate on sidelines in the field. And it takes a lot of practices to then empower the leader versus the coach leaning on the leader. Yeah, man, story is so powerful and real and connected. And yeah, man, I've learned from those failures that truly were devastating. And it's almost like you're watching this plane go down, and I didn't have the tool set at the time to save the team or even communicate and connect with those parents. I've been proactive and reached out and had coffee with them to try to understand what happened, because it just didn't make sense at the time of, and now aim to just be a better coach because of it, because I saw the devastation of disconnection and how it ripped a community apart that was together following a tragedy.
Yeah, I think, anytime thanks for sharing that. Cause I think I don't want to go past what just happened right there. Like, here's the guy that's teaching people how to be leaders, admitting that there was a point in his career that he didn't maybe do that. Right. And that doesn't go unnoticed by me, because that's that authenticity and that vulnerability. That's how you become better. That's how you become a better coach. That's how you know that you've made some of the mistakes or some of the challenges that have led to some of the things that you're trying to make it so that other people won't make those same mistakes or some of those things. I think that's really, really, really cool. I think I give this personality profile to all our coaches, and essentially it's the Gary Smiley personality profile. People have heard me talk about it, but you're a lion, you're an otter, you're a beaver, you're a retriever, and they're all leaders. They all have strengths, they all have weaknesses, and you got to know who you are, right? And everybody wants to be the leader, but like, that person's terrible with details. That's me. Like, I'm terrible with details. And I'm not the otter. I'm not the playful one. I'm not the one that's going to be dancing and making jokes all the time and doing those types of things. Right. But the thing that I think that you said in there that I think is important is, just because I'm a lion doesn't mean that every once in a while I need to break out a joke. I need to break out a dance move. I need to break out a movie reference or something, just to break the monotony. Right. And you get to be you the other 364 days, right? But make sure you have those other people around you that athletes can identify with. But at the same time, like, you got to work on the things that you're not great at too, and your athletes will love you that much more for it. And that creates that identity and that authenticity that you're talking about. But I want to shift gears a little bit. The NIL world and all the things that are going on in sports right now, right? You're dealing with a lot of coaches that are just throwing their hands up and they're saying, okay, I can't provide structure. I can't be an iron fist anymore. Like, I just got to be a player's coach. And essentially then the inmates are running the asylum, right? It's just a free for all. And I absolutely don't think that's not a recipe for success. That's not a recipe for winning. There has to be structure. You emphasize structure and discipline and, as a foundation, so you can have this kind of creativity and freedom. Like, Talk a little bit about how the modern day strength coach, that's who's mostly listening to this, can create that with still maintaining a player centric environment, I guess I should say.
Yeah. So I speak on discipline a lot, and it's been fun. I spoke at NSCA National. My presentation was called Punishment: Reframing Discipline at Practice. And how I view discipline is a set of tools. It's not, hey, we need to discipline them. We need to enforce certain things. Discipline is a set of tools that we as coaches can then hand off for them to make responsible decisions later in life. We could say responsible decisions on the field, because that's well-disciplined team. We hear that on NFL's coming up. So we see, hey, this is a very disciplined team. We hear that description used. Well, I want to take that description and give them tools so they make responsible decisions on and off the field. So first one, as a coach, we need to introduce them to delayed gratification. And this is a fascinating study. Anyone that hasn't looked it up, look up the marshmallow test. So they had a bunch. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. You got to YouTube it. So they take 2 to 4 year olds. They put them in a quiet room, and then a scientist researcher puts a marshmallow in front of them and says, if you can wait 2 minutes and not eat that marshmallow, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. So then you see the clips and the videos, and the kids they're hiding, they're going up and down, they're getting real close to it. They're pacing around. It's hilarious. So they're teaching delayed gratification. So this was a longitudinal study. They followed those kids until the SATs, and then they scored 200 plus points higher on their SATs. This is in the 1600 time frame. And it's just wild. But they assumed that those kids just innately had delayed gratification. So now as a coach, I'm thinking, well, how can I train delayed gratification? And I imagine a lot of coaches listening are already doing this. And think about the rewards. If we do this, then I'll give you that. Or if we say, hey, I got 20 gassers on the board today. Every time somebody does something right in practice or the weight room, I'm going to mark it off. I'm looking for good teamwork today. Teamwork, I call it when I see it. If I see somebody spot well, communicate, or pick up, clean up after each other, whatever it may be, you're marking it off. So now we're instituting our actions are connected to a reward at the end of this versus just, I'm going to make this decision so I don't get in trouble. That's not the type of delayed gratification that is going to lead to them having success in life. They're going to avoid certain things. They're going to learn to cover up their mistakes versus making an appropriate decision in the first place, or owning their mistakes and then realizing, next time I face this fork in the road, I know what happened. I had a consequence. I'm going to take the other route next time around. So delayed gratification is a great foundation for you to take that away. Then this is huge for me at the high school level, is level setting on your skill set. In order for a kid to be coachable, they have to understand exactly where they stand. And coach, you've seen this at every level, where you have a grandiosity belief that you're up here. So when coach says you a tip and gives you a guide to take one step better, you say, well, no, I'm too good for that. It's the cornerback that gets burned after a long touchdown, and then they come off the field limping. Like, no, dude, you made a mistake, or you were just out-athleted. There's nothing wrong with that. But we want to correct it next time we see that, or change our pursuit angle because you realized how fast that person was. But if I'm coming up limp or blaming somebody else, that's a problem, right? I'm smarter than coach. Coach doesn't know what he's talking about. Coach hates me. That's a whole different thing. So then level set, I can listen to the one step to get better. Then this is the most difficult part, and I'd argue it's covered up a lot at the college level and the high school levels, is low self-esteem. So if you see them and see their potential as they're right here, but they believe that they're down below that level set, well, guess what we got to do as coaches? We got to tread lightly with mistakes that they're making, and then build them up and find small victories, find small wins. With a lot of our team captains, they're more of the athletes that are lead by example, the introverted type. I'm a lead by example guy, and they've self-limiting belief down here that they're not a public speaker, they're not a vocal leader. Well, we need to help them understand that, hey, every time you count, I'm going to give him 10 count push-ups in the warm-up. Dude, that's public speaking, man. You crushed it. Everybody was on track listening to you. So now I'm reinforcing great things that go against his self-limiting belief, aiming to get him up here. So that way he, she, whomever it can be coachable. So level setting on your skill set, that's going to be a huge one. Delayed gratification, level set on skill set are the two biggest thing. And then the principle is like live where your feet are. So I'm on the field. This is where my feet are. I'm focused on the next play. I'm not living in the past. That's going to be huge. And it's a great skill after sport because you're no longer that football player. You're no longer that lacrosse player, no longer that volleyball player. You can have those great memories and feel great and still stay connected with your team. But now here we are 24, 34, 44. I need you to live where your feet are. So it's a representation that, yes, on the field, in the play, in this moment, what I believe is a dangerous game when athletes are stuck in this identity and their career is over. I still hold on to and dearly with my friends and our memories. We just had 2 of our teammates inducted in my college Hall of Fame, and we're going back and we don't remember the scores, but we remember the stories and the experiences and the fun plays. And that's what we're focused on. But that's not our lives. Now we're catching up on families. Now we're catching up on career wins and fun travel and etc. So, and who's still coaching? That's another thing. A lot of my teammates are still active and giving back to the game versus just living in our moment in time that we had of competition.
Man, so much good stuff in there. Going back to discipline, I think, with discipline, I think what I always say is a carrot the stick, right? The stick works, but it only works for so long. And, it gets to a point where it just doesn't like, I had, an athlete that I could make him run forever and he would come back and he would laugh at me and be like, I can do this all day.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key with discipline, any kind of accountability, I think it has to be transparent and it has to be consistent, right? Like that guy that's scoring 5 touchdowns, if he's not doing the discipline, then and you're only putting up the walk on it, then they both see that, and you lose your power there, right? I think the delusion that you mentioned, I think is a big, big deal, especially at the higher levels, is you've got people that have been told since they've been this big, how great they are. And they don't necessarily have that, so I've had 6'8", 340-pound giants that are crying in my office because they don't see the same guy. They see the guy that everybody made fun of when they were in elementary school because he looked different, and that happens more times than people think, right? And then the last thing I think you said there that I thought was really important is the training. Like I wrote a book, I did a book, The Weight Room Wisdom, about like the 5 minutes before the workout and the 5 minutes after the workout. But those were the key moments that I felt like that's really when you bring your team, like you start it the right way and you put a bow tie on it every day. That's your opportunity to do what we all said we got into this thing for, which is to make a difference in athletes' lives, to do that, right? And so to really start to think of all those skill sets that you want them to build, right? Commitment, teamwork, all these characteristics, and then build, just like you're building workouts, build lesson plans around those things to work into those moments and find those tactical ways to put delayed gratification into your workouts, and those types of deals. I've heard you talk about like a motivation drill or it's like a silent energy drill. Talk a little bit about that and how coaches can maybe put that into play.
Yes. So this is connected to everything I do is connected to child development. So in particular, where I mentioned self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, all of these are tools that are taught in elementary school, but even high schoolers and college kids, they need to reinforce on these lessons. So motivation drill was a high school drill from my college coach. They brought it over. And when I was an athlete and team captain, I thought it was the stupidest drill of all time. So what it was at college, we just set up 10 yards apart and our field didn't have yard markers. So coach would arbitrarily just set up these cones and be like, all right, motivation drill. So we get in anywhere from groups of 5 to 10 and we're set up on 2 different cones and I would sprint all the way across and then high five my teammate and then they would sprint and we would just exchange back and forth for 10 some odd yards. And if we weren't sprinting, we were yelling and cheering our teammate's name. So you got a bunch of college guys that are too cool for school. So we're like, this is stupid. But then we had to fake the energy, fake it till you feel it. And being a silly, rambunctious group that we were, we started to embrace it. and really just hard charge into this. And then the cue that coach gave, if we needed energy from the sidelines, he'd turn to us and say, motivation drill. And we'd all get hooting and hollering and silly. And that was the energy that we needed from the sideline to the field. Now I take that same drill and just apply some science to it. Derek Hanson's 10 and 10. We're going to sprint 10 yards and you have 10 yards to slow down and then you can walk back to the end of the line, but I need you hooting and hollering. So put some sprint technique to it. And then over the years of running this, now I started to feel and see an ebb and flow of energy. So it starts out hooting and hollering, but then 30 seconds, 60 seconds, guys just shut up or they get tired or they lose focus and they're just thinking about school or girls or something else. So you just feel the energy and hear the volume go down. Now, instead of me trying to be the motivation and the energy factor, I just lean into the captains, being like, do you feel that? You sense that? Where are we going right now? So now I'm starting to train and teach social awareness. I need them to feel the energy. It's no longer just what the captain feels inside. Can he feel the energy of his team? So now put it on them to hoot and holler and get everybody up or switch lines and start to get creative. So now different strategies of thinking outside the box of how do we get this drill? How do we end this freaking drill? Because it's no longer my like, all right, 10 and 10, Derek Hansen set reps. Now could go 3 minutes, could go 4 minutes. It's on the team. If we get 30 seconds, awesome. Or if the energy's down here. So now just trying to bring some just energy awareness across the board to the team using this sprint/conditioning drill. And then same cue. If we need some motivation and juice from the sidelines, then just yell out, hey, motivation drill. Instead of telling the guys, hey, get up. And they may say, oh, yeah, okay. And then go back to just watching the game. Now it's let's get wild. Let's hoot and holler. Let's throw some celebrations in there and level the energy. Because if I'm out on the field and I hear them screaming my name and I don't know that coach said motivation drill, now I posture up. Now they get my back. So it's helping them understand how to lead each other, but then it's structured in a fun, silly drill that's it's got a story from 20 plus years ago from my coach, and I was in their shoes and I was too good for it until like we just started to come together and be a great team.
And it's amazing. It's the second time on this podcast that we've had two elite coaches go back to youth development, and games and and those types of moments. It's just so important because I think, again, as we've gotten further away, my contention is that these guys, they've been put on these elite travel teams, and they're not getting the fundamentals that prepare them for the level to have a really solid foundation to be successful, to go to the next level, right? To go to the professional, to where it really is, it's not just your talent that separates you, anymore. And, I think that that's important that we go back and we implement some of these things. One thing that I, will kind of end with is I think that there's too many people that I intentionally, and I'd like to hear the science behind this maybe is like I intentionally make sure that there's crucible moments in every offseason. I call them crucible moment. Every offseason, it doesn't matter. We're going to have a moment where we're doing sprints. Then I'm going to, instead of saying on the whistle, it's going to be on 2 or it's going to be on 3. It's going to be on red. And guys are going to jump off sides and they're going to get pissed off at each other and they're going to have to work through that, right? That's going to happen every offseason at some point, right? Every time the freshmen come in, I'm going to make sure that I'm telling them that the direction and they're going to screw it up. And the older guys are going to get on the younger guys and they're going to have to experience like that. I make sure that those things are in the program because I think that having healthy conflict is important. You have to have that for growth. What are some things that you've done to create that kind of healthy conflict so that these athletes, they're working through these things that normally you would have done. Like I always tell you, I mean, a lot of these kids, they're living in freaking, houses that they bought now, and they're not living with their teammates, when we're back in school, like we're living in the same apartment complex and everybody's going in and out of everybody's room and you get pissed off because I ate freaking your last cookie and we get into a fight and then we have to make up and we have to go to practice 2 hours later, right? Like that's not happening as much anymore. And so what are the ways to create those kind of crucible moments, those kind of that healthy conflict in a program?
I miss those days, dorm rooms and college house. We had 6 guys in one house. I'm sad that they're not experiencing that. You get lifetime friends. You're going to be in each other's wedding. So focusing back to, I stay connected to the child development and responsible decision making. That's in self-management, where an athlete is unable to manage themselves in crucial moments. They lose their temper. They act second, right? Second guy always gets caught. Those are critical. So how can we manufacture those as a coach? This is, well, I'll throw a Raf Ruiz out there, calculated coaching. We can stack certain decks that one team in the competition is set up to just smoke everybody, or one team is set up to fail. I've done plate races on the ground where we have 45-pound plates that slide on the turf, and then bring out fives that have like the handles, and then they're different. They're not smooth, flat, standard 45-pound plates. So then one team is just demolishing them, and one team's getting stuck in the ground. So seeing how they react to that. Oh, this is not fair. Well, okay. So then I just play different personality cards as a coach, where I can sympathize, I can empathize, I can be like freaking tough cookie, and seeing how they manage it, but then be a mentor. And if a captain comes over and helps lead that group, or if they think outside the box and get 2 athletes on that plate, it slides much easier and they can keep up. So encouraging them to not just focus on the problem, aim to find a solution, whether it's with each other or leader calming the situation for that next step. There's also been moments, thinking of Ruiz, where the warm-up is not going well. They're not focused. This group over here is just, I don't know where they're at, but they're not here. Then we go right into our sprints. So teaching them how good they have it by taking it away. Instead of your 10-minute dynamic warm-up where we're ramping up, we're going right into conditioning because you're not respecting my time. So all the privilege that they have and opportunities, can we find a way in practice to then take it away? I like to give responsibilities as well. So if there is a kid on the team that has earned his money and he's making it, what responsibilities can I give him to now bring him back into the team? And that could be making sure that all the water bottles are filled. That could be speaking to the trainers to make sure all the water bottles are filled, or the freshmen, having them fill it up. So it's giving them responsibilities that we need them. And then if the responsibility is not met, or they forgot, or they brushed it off like, that doesn't matter, then the team suffers. And bring them into this. I don't like to exclude from punishment. I make sure that everybody's doing the same thing. If my head coach calls a punishment drill, I jump in there because I got a conditioning plan. So when the plan's disrupted, I gotta see how it's impacted on them by doing it personally. So I'd throw some calculated coaching. I'd put more responsibility in there. And if it's not going to work for a lot of kids where you just tell them how special they are, or tell them, hey, that's going to change you. You need to show them that it's important that you don't let it change you. And here's how. Communicating to freshmen, a shared responsibility, and then mutual accountability for mistakes that the team are going to do. Yeah. So that's how I would navigate and handle it within the practice time frame, and then aim to mentor the hell out of them, or share some stories, or reach out to you who's known plenty of professionals that did not manage their money well, and you could share some stories that professionals that are in dire straits right now because of poor management tools, that these kids can hopefully learn from that story that you share.
Yeah, good stuff, man. We end the show with some quick resources here. Give me a mistake that you see young coaches make that you.
Well, that's a lot. My biggest pet peeve, and I just did a podcast on this, is when young coaches kill a drill. If we're not moving, we're not learning. So if you see somebody make a mistake during a drill, I need you to pull them aside and let the other kids continue to roll, to run, to jump, do the skill work, whatever it may be, and you coach that up. I like to organize drills and skill work where there's a conductor and a coach. So the conductor's got the whistle. They're saying the cadence, the reps of when to go, when to start, when to stop, when to finish, next group up. And then there is a coach that sees the mistakes of the drill. And when that group finishes, they go off to the side to go to the end of the line. And then the coach gives them one thing, rule of one, Nick Winkelman, great book, The Language of Coaching. I can see it on my shelf right here. Rule of one, give them one thing to focus on the next time they're up. We as coaches have great knowledge, whether it's the weight room or the field, we could write dissertations on every single play and rep that they made a mistake and where it went wrong and why. That's not going to help them. So it's not about how much we know about the squat or the field play. It's what can we communicate? So just give them one thing to focus on. Don't stop the whole drill and tell one kid, one correction, and then we lose 3 or 4 drills within that 8-minute block. Times that by 45 practices within a whole season. I can't even do that math. I play defense, but that's a lot of reps that we missed that could have if we had a setup where it's a conductor and a coach. And what I love to do is then remove coach and put captain there. And eventually everybody starts to correct the skill work. And if somebody's off, does it incorrectly, then the whole team creates this culture of communication, accountability, and eventually leadership. But if I, as a selfish coach, just want to be both conductor and coach, kill the drill, that's not valuable time. I'm not handing off reps for the kids that need it. And then I'm not handing off leadership for the guys that need their voice reps, their vocal reps.
Yeah, and nothing stifles the achiever more than having to sit there and remediate the drill, for sure. What about you mentioned Nick's book? What's a book or a resource that you recommend for every coach?
For every coach. So what I did, I had a unique opportunity, and they can head to captainsandcoaches.com to find this. I had an opportunity. I was given 3 strength and conditioning books and just told, go read them. This is going to make you great. But there's no structure. So then what I did way back when was just provide structure and connect super training, science and practice, and Fred Hatfield's power, and just organize them into different chapters. I'm now an adjunct professor for California Baptist University. So now I was making a syllabus way back when, but now I just want to give it away. It's a great strength starter syllabus. And if you've read Super Training, it's like the Bible. I think I'm one of only a handful of people that's read it front to back, but it's a great reference, is what I'm saying. If you need this passage at this time, you go to it. Don't read it like a novel. I made that mistake for you. So I'll hand off that syllabus if they want. It's a 10-week crash course in strength and conditioning. I'd save it for the summer if I were you, when you got time. But yeah, I'll hand that off. And then, yeah, Captains and Coaches podcast, reaching out to leaders like yourself to then just download that entry-level leadership year and all the mistakes that they made and fun stories that they have. Because it's all lessons that we're now reframing versus trying to cover up. And hopefully those younger coaches can learn from our experiences.
One last question here. Who's a coach that you wish you could shadow?
Well, here's the beautiful thing, Ron, is if I had that wish, I made it happen. I had plenty of time, and I valued learning over money my whole career. So I made that happen. And you're great friends with the one man I wish everyone could follow and learn from. His name's Rafael Ruiz, Athlete ASAP on Instagram. Give him a follow. Now his son's a baseball phenom, and he's pouring all his knowledge into his family. He's actually moving back to Texas, so I'm grateful he's going to be in a short drive away from me now. But yeah, I owe that man so much, just from skill acquisition knowledge to connecting with athletes and modeling and representing what it is to me to be a capital C coach.
He's one of the best. I worked with Raph at the Bucks, and just a great mind, just a great unique perspective on this profession. But you got that too, man. I'm really excited about what you got going on with Captains and Coaches and the work that you're doing now. It's obvious. It's from anybody that's listening to this, it's obvious to know how much passion is behind this. Appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing. Just, if people want to stay in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
The easiest is Instagram. So it's my last name at McQuilkin, McQuilkin, and then Captains and Coaches podcast. Like, subscribe, do all that jazz.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.